People of Reddit, what stupid rule at your work, school backfired beautifully?
My old workplace had a control freak bean counter. At one point she decided that any purchase of equipment must come with documentation showing that we had search around the internet and prove you got the best deal. Honestly, it was unenforceable, so our supervisor just told us to ignore it and that he'll deal with the backlash. So one day, I had to buy some tools for the workshop, and I happened to come across a bunch of coolers on sale. It just happened that we needed coolers to transport stuff, so I bought one. I brought it back, we measured it and found it was the perfect size for what we had planned. Turns out that time the bean counter was watching us. She came strolling in my supervisor's office with a printout from Amazon and the boss in tow, saying that she had found a similar cooler for cheaper. My supervisor took a look at the printout. So you found a cooler that's $2 cheaper? Yes. How much time did you spend looking this up? Just 1 hour of work. And do you think Rum should have spent 1 hour of his workday to shop for coolers? Yes. You do realize we pay Rum $17 an hour? We need 3 coolers. Right now he grabbed those cooler while out on a supply run. And you'd rather have him spend 1 hour of his day, at $17 an hour, to save $6. And while we're at it, supervisor pulls out a broken vice grip from under his desk. This is the cheapo brand vice grip you approved. Now, this is fine for your regular at-home needs, but we're a workshop and need some quality stuff. We've been using a good stuff brand vice for 3 years. Cheapo lasted 6 months. Do the math.
I was working as a medical assistant at a private practice medical clinic. Our clinic manager wouldn't allow the new receptionist to drive to the bank to deposit cash. Made her walk carrying the money bag so that she couldn't drive away with the money. Bizarre, I know. That went on for a few weeks. Then the receptionist was mugged and over $1,000 in cash was stolen. She was allowed to drive after that.
My boss started putting all staff required to start 15 minutes earlier than indicated on the roster. I started keeping track of my unpaid overtime and stung her for 3 paid days off. That's not required anymore.
I worked for a consulting company, traveling Monday to Thursday somewhere in my country. We had a pretty good hotel allowance, enough for 5-star hotels, and a great rule: if you stayed with a friend, you got an allowance, about a third of the hotel allowance, to buy gifts for the host. I got the rare treat of a 6-month project in the town of my best friend from childhood was going to university. We made a great arrangement. I would crash at his place and spend the evenings drinking beer, watching movies and play video games. In return, I used the gift allowance to order dinner for the 2 of us. After submitting my first expense report, I was told by some HR drone that the gift allowance was supposed to be used seldomly and not for food for myself. So I booked a room in a 5-star hotel, was upgraded to a junior suite because of my rewards status and invited my friend to evenings of beer, video games and room service. After my second expense report, the project manager asked me about the tripling of the expenses compared to the first report. After explaining the situation and pointing out what sum of money it would mean over the 6 months, he got in contact with our. 2 days later, the rule was rescinded. The project even got my friend, the then newly released, PS3 as a thank you for letting me stay with him.
Management decided that lines of code written per week was a good metric for determining software engineer productivity. You want a 3-line function stretched out into 50 lines? I'm your captain.
Not mine, but an old roommate of mine was a senior developer for a small company. It was an open secret that one of the other senior devs, a guy who had been there since the beginning, would sometimes spend time looking at plastic surgery photos before, after shots, photos of active procedures, etc. He did it enough that people would poke fun at him about it, but he didn't seem embarrassed about it, and it wasn't harming anyone. Well, one day a project manager said something to the CEO about this guy's ongoing plastic surgery obsession, and the CEO flipped. He said that, going forward, no one was allowed to use their work computers to access external websites at all. Anyone who's ever been a developer knows that half the job is Googling stuff, so this policy pretty much halted productivity in its tracks. It only lasted a day before the CEO retracted the rule, but let everyone know that their browser history would be monitored going forward. After that, no one really changed their behavior, they just started remotely accessing their home computers to browse instead.
Back in the early my high school implemented a policy that you had to wear your ID tag at all times. If you didn't have it on, you were sent home. So many students lost their ID tag to go grab food or skip a class. We were the only graduating class to wear them all 4 years. The policy ended soon after.
I worked on this company that had mandatory 1-hour lunch breaks. Since we ate on the premises, our lunch break was often 15 minutes or so. We tried negotiating having shorter lunch breaks so we could leave earlier and beat traffic. Next day an email was sent from the OWN stating the fixed work and break hours for the whole team, and they were to be followed, no exceptions. Cool. Next week, a big client called about halfway through our lunch, and nobody moved. It rang and rang until said owner took the call, talked to them, and immediately came to scold us. Sorry, boss, as per your rules, we are off until 1 p.m., no exceptions. A couple of weeks later, we did some work on site for the same client. They were, to be honest, one of the coolest clients I ever had in my life. They took us out to lunch, and while talking we ended up relaying the owner's rule. They had a big chuckle over it, and while the project lasted, they made a point to always call while we were at lunch break just to annoy owner.
I worked at Starbucks for like 5+ years before and during undergrad, and at one point our district manager thought it was a good idea to implement a "just say yes" policy, where we literally weren't allowed to tell the customer no. Lasted for about 3 months, and in that 3 months our unaccounted product and waste went up over 300% because when the POS didn't have a way to punch in a customer request we had to just do it anyways. We also got complaints from stores in surrounding districts because they had angry customers who were requesting things that were against local food service code, and told them that we did it for them at our store. I knew exactly how that policy was going to play out, and I just laughed every time management was freaking out about the problems it was causing.
Not a stupid rule, but I think this should apply. I'm in aviation maintenance and wanted to leave the current company that I worked for 12 years with. During my interview at the new company, I was asked why I was thinking of leaving my current job, being that it was a good and reputable company. I said new management is all about efficiency and not the one thing aviation maintenance is all about, safety. Interviewer liked my interview and assured their company doesn't cut any corners in safety versus cost. I get the job. Fast forward 6 months or so, I'm the new guy, so I get the short end and have to work Xmas Eve. Should be a short day, boss's plane is coming in from Cabo to drop off chartered passengers, fill up on fuel and take him and family to their vacation home in Aspen. Plane arrives, and as I'm doing my post-flight walk around, I see a big problem that forces me to ground the plane. Boss is clearly not happy. Attempts to force me to make an unapproved repair. I deny to do so and I'm sent home. Sweet. I didn't quit. It's documented, and I get to go home earlier than planned on a holiday. Someone else gets called in to do the Mickey Mouse of a repair. Everyone's happy. Plane taxis out with owner and family, full on fuel, and tries to take off. Oops. Crappy repair failed. Huge component breaks off and goes into the inlet of the jet engine. Grenades that engine. Plane's brakes overheat trying to stop the heavy-ass plane with just one engine. Some fuselage is damaged from the engine that gave out, and the plane finally comes to a stop. FAA comes in. Sweet. Who made this repair? Who accepted to take this flight? What company operates this way? So, dummy tech that tried to make the repair gets his license revoked. The boss owns the charter company, so he's fined a huge amount and is put on a probation, with continuous FAA audits, and, best of all, the insurance rejected his claim to the engine because it was negligence. This cost him millions, and they couldn't fire me. I got to tell the story over and over and over with a big smile on my face.
A boss was worried we were stealing time by using the bathroom for too long. So being the nut job he locked all the bathrooms in the building except the ones he could see from his office door, shut of water to them, put out of order signs on them, and he would sit there with a stopwatch timing us between walking into the restroom and walking out. These are all one at a time restrooms, and then would call out the time. This was stupid, over the top, and almost positive is illegal, but he never made a policy officially restricting bathroom time. He just wanted to make everyone feel uncomfortable if they took too long. I discovered that with my height it was really easy to go through the drop ceiling and over the half wall, and I was the only other person using the men's besides my boss, who is short. So I went in, locked it from the inside and did my business and climbed out the ceiling, leaving the door locked so my boss could not get into the bathroom when he needed to go and was forced to use the ladies, which led to our female employees complaining that he was taking too long in their bathroom. To this day I don't know if he ever figured out how I was doing that.
My spouse's workplace realized they didn't have a policy about sending sexual images or jokes as part of their email acceptable use policy, so they added it. Except they made it a firing offense to send or receive sexual content. I think the intent was to stop people from subscribing to such content. They also said that your access would be immediately revoked until a determination was made. So someone got fired for something else and decided to send their whole management chain a graphically sexual image, then report it using the anonymous tip line. IT got the report, concluded they did indeed receive sexual content, and did as required, suspended all the involved email accounts, including the SVPs. The policy has since been reworded.
The dealership I was working at decided they wanted to save money by not having the cleaning crew come in after hours. People started leaving the dealership to go home to go to the bathroom because they were disgusting. I lived pretty far away, so I would just go use the GM's private bathroom.
The bottom floor of my secondary school was a square that had corridor all the way around. After some incident where a kid got knocked over, they implemented a one-way system. Unfortunately, they were very strict on enforcing it. If you accidentally walked past your class, you couldn't just turn around. They seemed very proud of their new rule. Until everyone started showing up late for class because they had to do extra laps of the bottom floor.
Couldn't buy drinks at lunch with cash money, had to buy some voucher. They were just cheaply made laminated pieces of paper. This was 2001, I was 13 and bored. Scanned the vouchers and printed them out on paper that kinda matched the color of the vouchers. And laminated them myself. They were horrible made and not even the right color on the backside. Also crudely cut out. I made about 100 of them, have passed them out after I tried paying with them for myself and encountered no problems. Made some new friends and upped production. Took them about 3 weeks to find out, but by then the fakes ones had intermingled with the real ones and had already been resold to students via the student office. About half of the vouchers sold were fakes. Drinks were cash only from then on. They had no choice to accept the fakes one for a little while longer though, as they had sold and charged for some of them.
A place I used to work had a rule that executive level staff needed to be contactable when on leave, so they had a section on the leave form for the address of where you'd be staying and a contact number. Some knuckle shuffler in HR decided it applied to all staff and the shenanigans began. People would put down the address and phone number of sex shops, sports grounds, medical clinics. I gave the latitude and longitude of the place I was going camping and the UHF __ frequency __ channel my radio would be tuned to.